This is Angela Gartner from Northeast Ohio Parent. This is the Summer Safety Talks. We are here with Dr. Zizzy Bucchieri from the Beachwood office of Akron Children's. Hello, Dr. Zizzy.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Welcome. And we are here today to talk about independence in the summertime. So, the first question I wanted to ask you was, why is it important for kids to learn independence?
Well, there's a lot of good reasons for children to be independent, but some of the benefits of them being independent are that it can help them with their creativity and some problem solving and their social skills if they have siblings that they're playing independently with, and teamwork as well.
Well, how do we encourage kids to be independent, especially in the summertime, as there's definitely more structure during the school year, but as the summer comes, parents may be working from home or they may be at work. So how do we encourage some independence, starting from, when they're little to from when they get into their teen years?
Sure. So it is actually good you phrased it that way because now you can certainly change if you have older children, but if you're starting out with younger children, you could start as young as infants where they're just laying on their play mat and you're in the same room with them, but you're not talking to them the entire time. You're letting them look around and explore and try to reach for a toy, and if they don't quite get it, don't put it right in their hand. Like, let them struggle a little bit. So you can do that with infants. And then as the children get older and they're toddlers, you want to create what we call a yes space, where the place where they're playing doesn't have sharp edges, doesn't have things they can grab and break and climb up on and fall, so that you don't have to say no, stop, don't. It's a yes space where everything in there they can do. They can touch it, they can put it in their mouth, they can explore it. And you're in the room with them because they're toddlers, they can't be left alone, but you're not telling them what to do. You're just watching them. You have a few, usually simple toys like wooden blocks, maybe some dolls, maybe some pretend playthings like a pretend kitchen. They love baskets and things that go in baskets, or the little toy shopping carts, and they love pushing all that all around the house. Like I said, blocks or Legos, just a few simple things that are not prescriptive, and let them just futz with it, and they'll play with it differently than you would, but that's okay. Okay, so that's for toddlers. And then for older kids in the preschool years, like the 3 to 5 year olds, they like a lot of imaginary play. So that's where like the kitchen and the babies and school and doing a lot of stuff. They like to do that, and they come up with, I don't know if you remember when your kids were little, they would tell you what to say. I'm the mommy and you're the kid, and I'm going to tell you what to do. And you just kind of say what they tell you to say. You do the script that they do. But you can be in the same room with them, but not actively playing with them. And then also starting to have them help out with some chores at home is a good idea. So you can be cooking. That's what a time when a lot of parents have trouble. What do I do with my kid when I'm cooking dinner? You can kind of take a Montessori approach and give them a plastic knife like you'd get at a takeout place, and they can cut up some cucumbers, or they can cut up some peppers, or they can put some lettuce in a bowl. They can set the table. They love spray bottles, so they love to clean with spray bottles, and you can get a non-toxic cleaner, and they can spray the table, spray the refrigerator. Laundry is another big one. They can help sort the socks and or sort the clothes into whose clothes are they, what color are they, so they can be helping with that. And they love Swiffers and sweeping and vacuums, so they can certainly help with that, and you can get them started with that. Then you're for the summertime issue, being outside if the weather's good. And it obviously depends on your house and the safety of your neighborhood, but for some families, the children can be in the backyard with you, keeping an eye on them. Maybe it's a fenced in backyard, but let them just explore and play, and let them get dirty. Let them step in the puddles and collect sticks and bugs and leaves and plants, and check everything out. And then for with you're with them and you're taking a walk, most of us are in a hurry. We got to go, we're late, get moving. They love to take a slow walk. So just taking a walk down the block and letting it take half an hour, or letting them stop at every last thing and checking it all out is helpful. And then as the children get older into school age, they could certainly do some reading on their own. They could do some imaginary play on their own. It's say if you are having to work from home, you could be doing some work and they could be doing something on their own. They can certainly check in with you if they need ideas. One thing I used to do when my kids were little, we called it Paper Town, where I would collect paper towel tubes, toilet paper tubes, packing peanuts, styrofoam trays, just all kinds of arts and craftsy stuff. I'd have it in a bin and then I just bring it out in a giant thing of glue and the kids would have a blast with it. And making your own Play-Doh, and then the kids are playing with Play-Doh. They can kind of do that by themselves. And then when they get even older, like 12 is the age where kids are allowed to babysit. So they really could be home on their own for little bits of time with, being able to call you if they had a problem and knowing not to answer the door if anybody rings the doorbell. Just a few safety rules for that. And then you also would want to make sure they knew what to do if there was a fire, basically to get out of the house. But the stop, drop, and roll if they're on fire. And just make sure they know those things. But they can be on their own for little bits of time.
So, I mean, as a parent, how do you know when your kids are ready? Even though, you say the age, like is age 12 like typical? But how do you know your kids are really ready to be kind of left on their own? Even if
Yeah, I
they're
remember.
out of the house a couple hours or even,
Right, right. I would start with small things like even you take a 15-minute walk in your neighborhood and the children are at home and they have a phone and they can reach you and you kind of, like I said, you review the safety rules that I talked about not opening the door and what to do. If they're, I mean, I usually would say no cooking while you're gone just because of the fire issue. Um, and have leave for 15 minutes and see how it goes. How did they do? Were they nervous? Were they scared? Did they feel comfortable? Every child is different. Some are ready for it, some are not. So you have to gauge it by the child. And then maybe you go to the grocery store for half an hour. You kind of, I wouldn't start with a 2 hour, window on their own at first, but just sort of see how they feel, how they're doing. If there are multiple children at home, it depends on the ages of the younger children. If you feel confident with your child, babysitting their little sibling. So I think it just depends on the family. And I would start with small amounts of time and build up.
now, I mean, when we talk about independent play, a lot of people talk about unstructured play. So
Mm-hmm.
can you talk about how that relates to independence?
Yeah, sure. So the idea behind unstructured play is it's not a game or an activity that has a prescribed way of doing it. So let's say a board game, you do it according to the rules, and that's how you do it. Um, Whereas unstructured play, they just take some materials or simple things around the house, like some pots and pans or the arts and crafts things, and just or kids love forts. They love to make forts. So with blankets and pillows, making a fort, making a tent, and then imagination is so big in children's lives that they pretend to be on an adventure. The couch turns into a boat and they're on the ocean. It really lets their imagination go if they're playing with simple things around the house, but no one's telling them what to do with it. That's the idea of the unstructured.
What are you seeing in your practice along with the unstructured play, especially with kids being independent and our kids being more independent, especially, now that we have all this screen time, is unstructured play something that, parents are striving for and striving for their kids to be independent, or is it just dealing with more screen time issues?
Yeah, I mean, I'm older. My children are older. I was lucky enough to raise them before screens became a thing for younger kids. So I'm striving to bring my patients back into that era because it's tough. Screens are very fun and they're kind of compelling, but they're completely the opposite of unstructured play. The kids are just absorbing the content, but they're not using any of their creativity or imagination. So I try to have kids stay off of the screens if possible until they're 2. Exceptions to that are I have families video their children doing things, so taking a walk, their birthday party, just even running around the house screaming. They love to look at their own videos, and I don't feel like that's bad screen time. So if you need your kid who's younger to watch screen time, I think watching their own self is okay. And then I found a lot of families have found that if they have no screen time on the weeknights, their children are much, much happier and better behaved. It's when you try to take the screen away, they have meltdowns and they're upset. But it's so easy to give them the screen. I mean, I'm sure you've seen it. You go to a restaurant, the kids are on a tablet. I even see it in my office. They are now on screens more than in the old days. You would bring a bag of toys and some art projects to do while waiting somewhere. But whereas now it's just hand them the screen. So if possible, I like for people to do the other things, read a book, do some art projects, play with Legos, play with a truck. And then when you start introducing the screens, really maybe try to have it just be certain times of day, like maybe when the parents are getting ready for work or when the parent is cooking dinner, and that you don't have the screens the other times of day. And then the kids learn, they'll still ask for it, but they'll kind of learn you're going to say no at those other times.
And especially with summertime, obviously during the school year, parents are a lot more structured. There's school, there's a lot more activities. So what would you say is, and especially for the older kids, the elementary, the middle schoolers and the teenagers, what would you say is good rules for screen time during the summer?
Yeah, I mean, that is a tough one. And I think it's keeping them busy, especially the older kids. Because if they're left to their own devices, if you're going to go to work and leave your kids home, they're going to be on their screen. But get them involved in camps or in babysitting other kids if they're old enough, or jobs or mother's helper. They need to be busy or they're going to be on those screens if you're not around policing it. But I try to keep the screen time to under 2 hours per day, if possible.
And talking about like summer learning and for the kids, because obviously screens can help with summer learning, but what are some other kind of independent play they can do that can also help kids during the summer and also how to learn? So there's a lot of parents are trying to kind of, mix the two. Is there any advice for parents who can help them be independent, but then also be learning at the same time?
Sure, and good old reading. Reading is a great way to learn vocabulary and learn things, and it could be nonfiction, it could be fiction. So reading is a great one. If your kids aren't big readers, audiobooks are great too. And there's a Libby app from the library, which is free, which is great. And then there's like a free website called Khan Academy you may have heard about. So if a kid was struggling a little bit with math or something towards the end of the year, if they do no math all summer, they're going to backslide usually a couple months. So they could do a little bit of that is on a screen, so it is a little more fun. So they could do some math games, and that could be a prize. You did a good job playing outside. You can do half an hour of Khan Academy, and then you get a half an hour of a show or something that they like to watch. And then creative writing when the kids get older, doing some journaling, some writing can be helpful. And then music, if they enjoy music, playing their musical instrument, it can be helpful. And then also just moving their bodies is not exactly learning, but it's good for their bodies, doing running and playing outside, playing basketball, playing soccer, playing catch, just moving their bodies is so helpful. And then in the school year, they sometimes don't get enough time for that.
And you touched on it a little bit, but the one thing is every kid is different. So one kid might be really good at independent play. You give them an activity and they just do it and it's great. But other kids need a little more help. So how can we encourage those kids who
Mm-hmm.
are a little bit more difficult at independent play
Mm-hmm.
be a little
Yeah,
independent?
right, right. And so that's sort of, I think it's the whole baby steps, work to try it in smaller increments, give them maybe a project, something to do, something to accomplish while you're doing another project. So let's say, you're doing laundry and you just say to them, well, why don't you rearrange something in your room? Or what, give them something that's sort of task oriented. Or maybe you can write me a story about what happened when you this past weekend. Give them something like a teacher would do, like a little bit of an assignment, but not tell them exactly how to do it, but kind of give them a guide. maybe do a little bit of writing, do a little bit of cleaning, do a little bit of exploring in the yard, observing. You could ask them to do like one of a great meditation is the five senses. What do you see? What do you smell? What do you hear? What are you feeling? And what are you tasting? And you could ask them to just do that and, just experience that and then maybe write it down. So that could maybe take up half an hour. So I think if you kind of give them some loose projects, and then a half an hour usually is a good amount of time that they could do something before you check in with them again. And if they pester you before the half an hour, you can just say, I'll be with you in 15 minutes or whatever. It's okay to say that.
Well, and as we talk about the summer, I mean, the summer has a lot of activities and non-activities. And, would you say, is there any way that, and we're always giving kids like all their food and making more lunches and stuff. Is there any way we can help them be more independent during snack time or lunchtime?
Yeah, for sure. And that would tie in. I'm a big fan of nutrition. So kind of teaching children about nutrition and making sure they have their vegetables and they have their fruit and they have a protein and they have some grains, and you can make it fun. There's something called Harvard My Plate, which has a picture of a plate with the different food groups, and they can have that on the counter and try to fill up some plates. And like I said, with the cooking, they can prepare a salad, they could cut up cucumbers, they could cut up peppers, they can make a sandwich. A lot of kids can make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich or a turkey sandwich. A lot of kids like hummus and veggies. And some people organize their refrigerator by kind of the vegetable area, the fruit area, the protein bin. A lot of families, when they pack their lunches, they have the stuff in the fridge in the different food groups. You need one from each of the bins, and then that's lunch. So they could work on making those bins, and then the kid knows for lunch they have to have one from each of the four bins, and then they've got lunch.
And speaking from a parent's perspective, some parents, and I've been known to do this too, we become a little helicopter where we, don't let our kids be as independent as we want them to be. So what advice do you give to parents to help themselves really kind of take a step back to let our kids be independent?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think doing a little bit of reading, you wouldn't have to do much, but if you just even Google benefits of independent play or unstructured play, you'll see all the benefits. And that might encourage you that this is the right thing. You want your a child when they're an adult to be independent. And so if you want that, you have to let go a little bit and let them fall and let them make a mistake and let them break something, so that they understand. I hear a lot of parents, oh, be careful. Don't do that. You might hurt yourself. You might fall. They will fall and they'll bump their knee. And it's, as long as they're not falling from a big height, if they're just tripping a little bit and a few bumps and bruises here and there is growing up. And, if they're getting themselves dressed and the outfit is crazy, just go with it. If they make their lunch and it looks ridiculous, but it has all the food groups, that's fine too. You have to, if you want them to do it independently, it's not going to be done as you would like it. And you have to be willing to let go on perfection and just be happy that they did it. If people see your kid in a crazy outfit, they are going to know that you did not pick that outfit. And then usually the other person says, wow, you got yourself dressed today. And they're like, yes, I did, with their, plaid shirt and sparkle check pants and, crazy winter hat in the summer. But that's all good. That's all good. If they get hot, they'll take it off.
Well, and that's actually, you brought up a good point about reinforcement. So, how do you help your kid? How do you help reinforce it when they are being independent?
Yeah. And, we're in the kind of good job group. Everyone's, oh, good job. You did great. You did great. You did great. I mean, I think some of it is let the child have some satisfaction too, but you might want to say, oh, wow, I noticed you played so nicely, or I see you made your lunch, or you got yourself dressed, but you don't want to go too crazy on the praise, or sometimes the kids can see right through that too. But if it was something cool or new that they did, you can remark on their effort. Sometimes it's better to remark on their effort than the outcome. Like, oh, you worked really hard on that. And then also, you probably know this, but if they're doing an art project, notice something about it. Oh, I noticed you used purple for the flowers and green for the grass, as opposed to, oh, that's pretty. But you want to prove that you actually looked at it. And then they know, and they know that you really were watching.
Yeah, being specific as possible.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Well, is
yeah.
there anything else that we missed that anything lastly you want to say about, giving your kids that independence really as we kind of head towards the summer season?
Yeah, I mean, I think we kind of touched on a lot of the things. Start when they're younger, give them start with smaller amounts of time. If they seem a little lost, give them a couple ideas of what they could do. One thing I did with my kids when they were young, when we were busy and we didn't have time to do something, we would write it down and put it in a jar with the thing that we wanted to do but we didn't have time for. And then when they were bored, which is boredom is good and it leads to creativity, I'd have them go to the jar and pull something out and then be like, oh yeah, we wanted to build the house or play such and such game. So that can be helpful too. On the days that you are busy and you're racing somewhere and they want to do something, you can throw the idea in the jar and they can do it later. And just know you'll make mistakes and you'll all learn along the way. But as your children get more independent and play on their own and become more creative, you'll able to take a deep breath and not feel like, oh, this is, I mean, parenting is challenging, but it gets less challenging the more the children are doing on their own, and more fun too, which is part of the joy of having children.
Well, I want to thank you so much for talking with us today. So, how can people reach out to you?
Sure. Yeah. I'm a pediatrician in the Beachwood office of Akron Children's Pediatrics. And our telephone number is 216-591-1515. And we're located at 3733 Park East Boulevard, Suite 102. And I work with Dr. Julie Hertzer, and we'd be happy to hear from you or see your children as patients.
And you can also visit akronchildrens.org. And for more information on Northeast Ohio Parent, visit northeastohioparent.com. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll see you
Have a
next.
great summer.